There comes a moment in every good woman's life when she looks in the mirror and no longer recognizes the version of herself she became for a man who didn't deserve her. And that moment right there is when everything changes. See, people often talk about what happens when a man walks away, but almost no one talks about what happens when a good woman is hurt so deeply she emotionally disconnects. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because her soul is tired and she's finally realized that love should never feel like begging to be chosen. What most men don't realize is that hurting a good woman doesn't just break her heart, it awakens her. It forces her into a rebirth. And once she rises, she's never the same again. She doesn't cry the same. She doesn't wait around. She doesn't keep the door open. This video isn't about bitterness. It's about truth, raw, real truth that too many people avoid. Because let's be honest, no one warns you what it costs to lose someone who genuinely loved you at your lowest. We're going to break down exactly what happens, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, when a man takes a good woman for granted. We'll explore how she changes, how he regrets it, and why a silence becomes more powerful than any goodbye. If you're a woman who's ever been hurt deeply and quietly walked away, without closure, or a man trying to understand what went wrong when she stopped trying, this video will open your eyes in ways most conversations won't. Because after the damage is done, what follows isn't revenge, it's transformation. When a good woman gets hurt, it doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow unraveling. She doesn't wake up one morning and stop caring. She stays. She tries. She holds on longer than she should. She silences her own needs to protect the relationship. And that's what makes her pain so powerful. It builds over time beneath the surface in silence. She's the type who forgives more times than anyone knows. She makes excuses for his behavior. She believes in his potential, even when his actions fall short. She shows up loyal, consistent, supportive, hoping that one day he'll finally see her, value her, and rise to meet her, love with the same energy. But he doesn't. Not because he can't, because he doesn't think she'll ever leave. And that's where the real hurt begins. Because good women love with depth. They don't just offer companionship. They pour their entire soul into the person they choose. So when they're met with betrayal, disrespect, manipulation, or emotional neglect, it cuts deeper than most can understand. It's not just heartbreak. It's a loss of trust, of safety, of identity. She begins to question herself. Am I not enough? Did I love too much? What more could I have done? And while she's breaking inside, the world sees a woman still smiling, still showing up, still trying to hold it all together. That's the thing about a good woman. She rarely lets you see her fall apart in public. But behind closed doors, the tears are loud. The confusion is suffocating. The disappointment unbearable. Over time, something shifts. Not overnight, but gradually, day by day. Her silence grows. Her tolerance shrinks. She stops explaining herself. She stops begging to be understood. The emotional weight of carrying the relationship alone becomes too heavy to bear. And where she once fought, she now observes. Where she once overgave, she now holds back. She emotionally detaches, not because she doesn't care, but because she's finally realizing she has to care about herself more. The hardest part, she still loves him. That love doesn't vanish right away. But the difference now is that she's no longer willing to abandon herself in the name of love. She no longer wants to stay in a place where she constantly feels unseen, unheard, and undervalued. And for the man who hurt her, he often doesn't notice she's slipping away until she's already gone. That's the irony. While he thought she'd never leave, she was already halfway out the door in her heart. Her goodbye isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the way she no longer argues, in the way her eyes stop lighting up, in how she protects her peace instead of chasing validation. When a good woman gets hurt, she doesn't seek revenge. She seeks healing. She rebuilds. She transforms. And one day he'll look for her in every woman he meets. But she'll have already become someone who no longer recognizes the version of herself that waited for him to change. The turning point doesn't come with a fight or a dramatic exit. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible if you're not paying attention. It's in the way she stops repeating herself, the way she no longer tries to explain how she feels, It's in her silence when you expect a reaction, in her calmness when she used to cry, in her distance when she used to cling to hope. A good woman doesn't just walk away the moment things go wrong. She gives chances. She forgives. She hopes. She believes in change. But when the hurt becomes a cycle, when her voice keeps getting ignored, when the effort is always one-sided, she begins to withdraw emotionally, not to hurt you, but to protect herself. She stops initiating conversations, stops waiting up for your texts, stops asking you what's wrong when she can already feel the disconnect. And yet you might think everything's fine because she's not yelling. She's not accused, but what you don't realize is that her silence is louder than it's ever been. It's in the way she no longer laughs at your jokes, how she doesn't light up when you walk into the room. The little things she used to do, checking in, planning dates, sending good morning messages, fade without warning. She pulls back not because she's lost interest in you, but because she's finally realizing she has to put herself first. She stops begging for effort, stops trying to convince you to care, stops making excuses for your lack of presence. And that's when the dynamic changes, when the energy she used to pour into you is redirected toward herself. This is the moment many men miss. They don't see it until it's too late. They mistake her quiet for peace, not knowing it's the calm before she walks away for good. Because once a good woman gets tired of being the only one fighting, she won't fight anymore. And the saddest part, she still loves you, but she's learning to love herself more. That's the shift. That's the point of no return. The emotional exit always comes long before the physical one. And by the time you realize she's slipping away, she's already gone in every way that matters. At first, he doesn't feel it. Not really. When she starts pulling away, he might notice the distance, but he assumes she'll come back. She always has. He underestimates her silence, misreads her calmness as indifference. He doesn't realize that her lack of reaction is the beginning of the end. So he continues on, unaware that he's slowly losing the one person who loved him without conditions. But eventually, the reality sets in. It doesn't hit all at once, it creeps in. One day he notices the energy has shifted. Her eyes don't shine when she looks at him. She doesn't reach for his hand anymore. Her laugh no longer fills the room. And when he tries to test the waters, when he casually checks in to see if she's still holding on, he finds a woman who's colder now, not cruel, just emotionally distant, wrapped in a peace that no longer involves him. That's when the emotional consequences begin to surface. He starts remembering the small things, her thoughtfulness, the way she used to support him when no one else did, how she believed in him even when he doubted himself. He remembers her loyalty, her patience, her warmth, and suddenly those things don't feel so ordinary anymore. They feel irreplaceable. He tries to fill the void, maybe with distractions, maybe with someone new. But no matter who he's with or what he's doing, something is always missing. Because what she gave him wasn't just attention. It was genuine care. And once you've been loved deeply by a good woman, surface level love never satisfies you again. He starts replaying moments in his mind. The things he said, the things he didn't say, the times she cried and he looked the other way, the nights she needed reassurance and he gave her silence. And now, in hindsight, he realizes those were the moments she was slipping through his fingers. Regret is a heavy thing, especially when it comes too late. He starts to feel the emptiness, not just from her absence, but from the absence of the version of himself that existed when she was in his life. She believed in him. She held him together. She made life softer. And now without her, everything feels a little colder, a little louder, a little more chaotic. He begins to understand that good women don't stay where they are undervalued. That her leaving wasn't about pride, it was about survival. And that no matter how many times he replays the past, he can't reverse the moment she stopped needing him. The emotional consequences don't just come from losing her. They come from realizing she was the best thing that ever happened to him, and he pushed her away. And that pain, it lingers, not just for days or weeks, but sometimes for a lifetime. Because once a man realizes he lost a woman who would have done anything for him, he also realizes he'll never find another quite like her. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It starts in the quiet moments, when the tears have dried up, but the ache still lingers. When she's finally stopped checking her phone, hoping for a message that never comes. When she no longer tries to make sense of why things ended the way they did. That's when the healing begins. Not with closure from him, but with acceptance from within. At first, it's messy. She has to face the pain she kept burying under strength. She has to grieve not just the relationship, but the version of herself she became in order to hold it together. The version that overcompensated, that tolerated too much, that lost her own reflection, trying to love someone else into wholeness. She realizes now that wasn't love. That was self-abandonment, disguised as loyalty. So she starts to rebuild slowly, quietly, and without announcement. She reclaims her mornings. She pours into herself instead of pouring into someone who was never ready to receive her. She journals, she prays, she reconnects with the parts of her that were neglected. The dreams she put on hold, the passions she let fade, the confidence she once wore so boldly. And little by little, she starts to feel something she hasn't felt in a long time herself. She doesn't need validation from him anymore. She doesn't need an apology to heal. She's learning that the apology she waited for was really the one she needed to give herself for staying too long, for giving too much, for loving someone more than she loved herself. The beauty of her healing phase is that it's not loud. It's not posted all over social media. It's quiet, internal, sacred. It happens in long walks, deep breath, uncomfortable truths, and nights where she chooses peace over loneliness. She no longer sees being alone as empty. She sees it as an opportunity to return home to who she was before the heartbreak. And then one day, something shifts. The songs that once made her cry now make her smile. The memories that used to haunt her now feel like distant echoes. She starts dressing up for herself, laughing without hesitation, setting boundaries unapologetically, saying no without guilt. She begins to trust herself again, to trust her voice, her intuition, her worth. She's no longer waiting to be chosen. She chooses herself fully, authentically, boldly. And here's the most beautiful part. She doesn't hate him. She doesn't seek revenge or wish him pain, because healing has made her softer, not bitter, wiser, not colder, stronger, but still kind. She doesn't carry the weight of resentment, because she knows that carrying it would only anchor her to the past she worked so hard to rise from. Her healing doesn't make her untouchable. It makes her magnetic. Not because she needs anyone, but because she's whole on her own. And that energy, that's something he'll feel even if he never says a word. By the time he realizes what he lost, she's already outgrown who she was when she loved him. She's not the same woman anymore. She's stronger, freer, more self-aware. She's not looking back. She's building forward. And the life she's creating now, it's rooted in peace, purpose, and power. Healing wasn't about moving on from him. It was about coming back home to herself. And that journey, painful, sacred, and transformational, became the most beautiful chapter of her life. Her transformation doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It happens quietly after the storm, after the tears, the nights of overthinking, and the endless questions with no answers. She doesn't wake up one morning and feel healed, but day by day, she starts to feel different, stronger, clearer, more in control of herself. She's no longer defined by the hurt. She remembers it. Yes, it shaped her. It taught her. But it no longer holds her captive. She doesn't wake up with that heaviness in her chest anymore. The pit in her stomach has faded. The constant replaying of the past doesn't echo as loud. Instead, she wakes up with intention, with clarity, with peace. The woman she's becoming doesn't beg for love. She embodies it. She doesn't chase, convince, or shrink herself to be chosen. She radiates self-respect. She walks with boundaries that no longer require explanation. Her time, her energy, her heart, none of it is given without discernment, because now she knows her worth, not just in words, but in action. What once broke her now builds her. She no longer looks for closure from someone who was never open. She gave herself the permission to move forward without the apology she deserved. And in doing that, she took back her power. She's no longer emotionally dependent on someone else's presence to feel whole. She found that within herself. She's bolder now, not loud, not arrogant, but grounded. Her confidence doesn't scream, it speaks in silence. In her ability to walk away from what no longer aligns. In her refusal to tolerate bare minimum energy. In her peace that can't be shaken by temporary attention or empty promises. People around her start to notice there's something different in her smile, something stronger in her eyes. She speaks with purpose. She no longer second guesses herself. She doesn't over-explain. She's not trying to prove she's lovable. She knows she is. And anyone who fails to see that simply isn't meant to stand beside her. She's also more compassionate now, not less, because the pain she went through didn't harden her. It deepened her. She has more empathy, more insight, more emotional intelligence. She can see through intentions, feel misalignment, and sense when energy isn't pure. That's not paranoia. It's wisdom earned through survival. Her transformation isn't about being perfect. It's about being real, authentic, unapologetic. She owns her flaws, honors her journey, and embraces her growth without shame. She doesn't need to broadcast her evolution. It's felt in the way she walks, speaks, loves. She used to love with desperation, thinking love required sacrifice. Now she loves with intention, knowing love should feel safe, balanced, and mutual. She no longer fears being alone. She fears being in places where she has to hide her soul just to be accepted. And perhaps the most powerful part of her transformation, she no longer needs closure. She doesn't need him to come back, admit he was wrong, or tell her she mattered. She knows she did. She always did. She was just with someone who wasn't ready for the depth she brought. Now she's not waiting to be loved right. She's making space for it. She's walking forward, not bitter, but wiser. Not closed off, but selective. Not guarded, but aware. Because she knows what it costs to lose herself for love. And she'll never pay that price again. From broken to bold, she didn't just heal, she evolved. And that is the version of her the world was always meant to see. Redefining self-worth doesn't happen the moment he leaves. It begins the moment she realizes she was never supposed to beg for love in the first place. When the fog of heartbreak begins to clear, she starts seeing herself through a new lens. Not through his absence, but through her own presence. She starts noticing the patterns, the way she dimmed her light to make others comfortable. How often she apologized for being too much, when in reality she was simply too real for someone who didn't know how to receive her. She gave too many second chances, thinking love meant endurance, when in truth love also means self-respect. She stopped settling for halfway love. She's no longer impressed by temporary attention, sweet words without action, or romantic gestures that lack consistency. She sees through it now. Her self-worth speaks through her standards, through the boundaries she sets, through the peace she refuses to trade for company. This new version of her doesn't fear losing people. She fears losing herself to people. She knows that anyone who requires her to abandon her truth, her needs, her voice, or her values is not someone meant to stay. She no longer fights to prove she's enough. She just is. And if someone can't see that, she'll walk away. Not bitter, but certain. She no longer needs to be fixed. She was never broken. She just outgrew the spaces that couldn't hold her. And now she's intentional about where she places her energy, about who gets access to her, about what she allows in her world. She practices self-love differently now. Not just bubble baths and affirmations, but in the hard choices, in saying no, in choosing solitude over settling, in walking away from people who drain her, in holding space for herself when no one else does. She surrounds herself with people who see her clearly, who love her without conditions, who don't flinch at her intensity or her softness. People who make her feel safe, not small. That's the love she's aligned with now, because it reflects how she sees herself. Her self-worth is no longer fragile. It's unshakable, rooted in truth, in resilience, in the undeniable fact that she is enough, simply because she exists. She doesn't need to chase validation. She is the validation. Her presence, her heart, her energy, all speak for themselves. She's not for everyone, and that's okay. She's no longer trying to be, she's focused on being true to herself, and that's more powerful than any external approval could ever be. She's not rebuilding to become who she was before him. She's becoming someone stronger than she ever imagined, someone grounded, self-aware, whole, because in redefining her worth, she didn't just rise, she remembered who she was all along. Her comeback isn't about revenge. It never was. There was a time she imagined it might be, when the pain was still fresh and her heart was bleeding. She dreamed of the day he'd see her thriving and regret everything he did. She wanted him to feel even a fraction of what she endured. She wanted him to understand the weight of the tears, the exhaustion from loving so hard and receiving so little. But with time and healing, her desires changed. She realized her comeback wasn't rooted in bitterness. It was born from rebirth. It wasn't about proving anything to him. It was about finally showing up for herself. Revenge would have kept her tied to the wound. It would have meant that her power still belonged to the person who broke her. But healing demanded more. It required her to let go of the need to be understood by the one who never tried to understand her. It called her to rise, not out of spite, but out of self-love. She started focusing on her growth, not as a weapon, but as a celebration. Every step forward became sacred. Every new boundary, every no she used to be afraid to say, every tear she no longer had to cry. These were victories, not because they punished him, but because they liberated her. Her glow-up wasn't cosmetic, it was spiritual, emotional, internal. She didn't just change how she looked. She changed how she saw herself. She started walking differently, talking differently, loving differently. She no longer needed validation, applause, or closure. She was the closure. She was the evolution. And while he may one day see her and feel that sting of loss, that's not her intention. She's not looking back to see if he regrets it. She's too busy building a life she doesn't need to escape from, too focused on becoming the woman she once needed, too fulfilled by her own peace, to be distracted by the past. Because true power isn't in hurting someone back. It's in healing so deeply that they no longer have the power to hurt you at all. Her comeback is quiet but powerful. It's in her calm, in her clarity, in the way she carries herself now unbothered, unapologetic, and unmistakably whole. She's not trying to make him feel small. She's just finally owning how big her love is and making sure it's only given where it's valued. In the end, her greatest revenge is no revenge at all. It's her peace, her freedom, her joy, and that's something no one can take from her ever again. If there's one truth she now carries with her, it's this. Being a good woman doesn't mean tolerating being broken. Her softness is not weakness. Her loyalty is not a license for mistreatment. Her love is deep, rare, and powerful. And moving forward, she's no longer giving it to people who haven't earned it. This journey taught her that healing isn't linear, and growth doesn't come easy. But every hard step was worth it, because now she's not just surviving, she's thriving. She's no longer defined by what hurt her. She's defined by how she rose. The pain didn't break her. It built her. It sharpened her instincts, strengthened her standards, and awakened a version of herself that's unshakable. She's learned to honor her feelings, listen to her intuition, and protect her peace. That's not just empowerment, that's evolution. So what's next? She continues walking in her power. She sets the tone for how she's treated. She no longer waits to be chosen. She chooses herself daily. And when love finds her again, it will have to rise to her level, not the other way around. Her next chapter is about joy, boundaries, softness, and strength. It's about thriving on her own terms and surrounding herself with people who reflect the love she now gives herself. To any woman listening, your worth isn't lost because someone failed to see it. You are not too much, you were just too real for someone not ready. Keep growing, keep healing, and remember your comeback isn't about who hurt you, it's about who you're becoming. And that woman, she's unstoppable.